Aloha, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live. I have Alema here, I'm G, and we are Manuia. We're so grateful to have our special guest, Kjerstin. She's like a daughter to us, and she has some awesome news and content that she'll be sharing with us a little bit later. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that we are doing 4 Facebook Lives for the next 4 weeks, well, including starting this week. Alema's working on the camera, so hopefully you can still hear and see us. Looks like we're on. But yeah, so we'll be talking for the next 3 weeks about how to prepare your junior for college admission. And tonight we are focusing on tests, taking those dreaded tests, actually those wonderful tests that all of you guys are thinking about as you're preparing. So without further ado, let's get started, and I'll turn some time over to Alema.
Hey guys, welcome to Manuia Facebook Live. We're hoping that this is very helpful for many of you families who's trying to get organized. But let's talk a little bit about the ACT and SAT exam and what's going on with some of these policies, the admissions policies that are going on. I just want to share with you that so far in many of the universities, including the top universities, they're now debating whether they will be needing you to take the ACT or the SAT or not. And so some of these policies, I want you to just get a feel for the names of these policies. So one of the policies is test optional, and that means the school...
It's optional.
That's right. You can...
I got it.
You can choose whether you'll submit your test score as part of your application or not. And so that's a nice little option. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's kind of where universities are going anyways. They're seeing that the ACT and SAT weren't really reflecting who graduates at the end. And so that's why they're kind of changing up the policies to see.
That's kind of interesting. Sorry, Alema, I didn't interrupt you there. Didn't mean to startle you. But, you know, I always thought the ACT, SAT was like a weeding out process, but you're saying it's not a great indication as to if you'll graduate or not.
Yeah, they're seeing that it's not really an indicator.
Okay.
It's not as a tool of trying to weed out and trying to see who they would admit. They're seeing that it's not really doing what they want it to do. Okay. And so they're really thinking seriously of just doing away with it altogether. So right now you've got some schools with test optional. Other schools are going test flexible, which means they are actually accepting some other exams like an AP subject test or score like that, or you know, it just depends on. So depending on the school, they have a certain policy that they're going to do for 2021 and 2022. And so that's one of the other options. The third option is test blind. And so for test blind, it's exactly that. It doesn't matter whether you submit your test score or not. It doesn't matter whether you bombed the test or you got a perfect score. They will not use any of your test scores as part of the application process.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that even if you got this awesome score, which I know a lot of you kids out there, you're getting those great scores, you're saying they can't even use them? Like the institution won't even look at them?
No. So
don't quit. Keep going.
My thought is you need some really good counseling as to how you would have what strategy you would use, which policy, which school that you're applying to. All that needs to be factored in as you're trying to decide whether to take an exam or not. But many schools, in fact, I'm seeing some of the top schools are still test optional, which means if you were to take a test and decide not to take your submit your test score, they're saying that it's optional. However, if you were to submit a test score and it was a perfect score, they would use it as part of the application. So this is what I'm saying.
Credit for all that work.
What I'm saying is approach it like you would anything else. you would take the pre-ACT, you would take the ACT, you would take the ACT again, and you may even take it a third time. Because,
and that's okay.
Because getting into schools is and you've got to set yourself apart somehow. And if that's your strength, then I would say go ahead and use that and do that.
Okay, so what you're saying is test optional means you can take the test, you can see what you get, and then you can decide. Is that what you're saying?
Test optional means that yes, you can see what score you have, right? Okay. And I think you could do that on a regular year as well, years in past.
Sure.
You just take your best score and you submit the best score.
Okay.
So test optional means that, say you didn't have a really good score.
Right.
And then you wouldn't submit the score.
Don't submit it.
And it wouldn't, it wouldn't affect your application.
Okay, so interestingly enough, I heard that they could still see the score. Is that not so?
So when it's test blind, that's when you know a school is not going to even look at the score.
Okay, but if you did take the test, can they still, like the school can still pull up like that?
So that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how many times you took the test, even if you even submitted the perfect score, right? Okay. Even if they could look it up and see what your score is, when it comes down to weighing your application, it will not use the test score.
Wow.
Test blind.
You see that? Guys.
But that sounds really cool. Not being able to take the ACT or SAT and not having to submit that sounds really good. But there's a lot of pressure now on the other parts of the application that you really need to shine on.
Oh, just breathe, everybody. It's going to be okay. This is why we're here to help you tonight. So for those of you who have just joined us, thank you so much for sharing your Sunday evening with us. This is Alema. I'm G. We have Kjerstin,
our rock star,
our special guest. And tonight we are talking about those test scores and how they work towards your application. Okay. So Alema just shared with us 3 things: test optional, test flexible, and test blind. So if you need a little bit more coaching with that, set up a free Zoom consultation with us and we'll actually look at your child specifically. So we're going to go ahead and turn some time over to our girl here. She's like a daughter to us if I haven't already said that. And Kjerstin is going to share with us why she is so knowledgeable about test taking.
You guys are too kind to me. So I'm Kjerstin. I'm best friends with their daughter Sala, so that's how we know each other. But I do ACT tutoring, so I help their daughter Nafi with her ACT, and I helped a couple other people. I'm actually going to be an English teacher, so
What do you know?
So I do this kind of a lot. But my number 1 tip for ACT, the best way that you can improve if you're taking the SAT, any standardized test, is just to practice. You just have to take tons and tons and tons of tests.
Tons and tons and tons and tons.
Yes.
Meaning 1, it doesn't count as tons.
1 doesn't count as
1
tons.
1 is not tons.
But when you're practicing, you don't have to do the whole thing. You don't have to say, oh, I'm going to spend a whole 4 hours sitting here doing this test.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to take the ACT, SAT even if you're practicing every Saturday.
Yep, that sounds like no fun. So you can take it in little sections. You can say, okay, today I'm going to work on English, and just take your little English section. That takes you an hour.
Okay.
And be like, okay, I have an hour this Tuesday or something. Like maybe you don't have a sports practice or something. You totally have time.
Break it up, guys. Yeah. Break it up.
Because then you can just be like, yep, English is my thing today. Okay, tomorrow I'll do science. And they don't take long. Some of the sections are even 35 minutes.
Right. Nice.
So that's just 1, maybe 2 Netflix episodes. You don't have to watch. You can take the ACT.
Put it on pause.
Practice for just 1 minute. Just a couple of minutes. You can do it. Okay, now break it up into different sections. So the first section you take is English, which is my favorite. English is one of the sections where if you don't already know a lot of your English, it might be a little bit hard. So what you should do is instead of going in and freaking out a little bit,
don't freak out.
Take a minute. You're going to be okay. And just remember, it's okay if you have to read it out loud to yourself.
Oh.
So sometimes, like if I'm hearing a sentence or I read a sentence, I can't find what the problem is, even though they'll underline it for you. They'll say, find the problem in this underlined part.
Okay.
You might not be able to find the problem unless you say, okay, I'm going to say this out loud really quick. Whisper it to yourself. It's fine. Nobody's listening. They're all doing their own thing. Whisper it to yourself and say, oh, I got it. I figured out what's wrong.
It's a different way of listening to it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Say it out loud.
Yes, in a whisper.
Yes.
A whisper.
A whisper. We're not trying to yell this at the ACT room. They probably wouldn't appreciate that very much. But you can whisper it, and then if you still don't get it, skip it, come back to it later. Star it.
Yes.
Leave it for a minute, come back.
Okay.
You can get it. They split the English section up into like 5 pieces anyway.
Okay.
So you can do one passage, then go on to the next one, and then be like, okay, yeah, now I have time to go back to the other one.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, right? Go for what you know, and then come back to what you need a little more time with.
If you're likely to miss it anyway, why are you spending so much time on it?
Why are you
There's other questions,
time, guys?
Right. The strategy of taking the test.
Yes.
Good strategy.
Yeah.
Focus on answering versus, I don't know. Come back to it.
Yeah, come back to it. If you don't know it, skip it. It's okay. Skip. You want to get the ones that you already know right anyway.
Just don't skip the whole test.
Yeah, don't skip the whole thing. Probably a bad strategy. Okay, so your second section that you do is math. And this one, what they do, they make the end section kind of hard. So what you want to do is try and get, there's 60 questions on it, and it takes an hour and 15 minutes. And you'll have probably the first 10 or 20 questions, you'll be like, man, I did this in like 6th grade. I can totally remember this. This is easy.
Y'all went to 6th grade. I know that.
Yeah, if you're a junior in high school, you better have gone to 6th grade. So you want to kind of get through your first like 40 questions.
Okay.
And those are the ones that you can be like, yep, I know this. I can get this one right.
Awesome.
I know what I'm doing.
So the good vibes are flowing.
Yeah.
You got it.
When you get to like the last 10 to 20, that's when it gets kind of hard. And so then that's when you want to be like, okay, I'm going to just try and do as many as I can that I already know. Okay. Skip all the ones you don't.
Skip those ones
Come
you
back.
don't.
The last 10 are going to be really hard. You probably aren't going to get them right.
So why
spend
really time on that?
So why are you spending your time on that?
Because it's a time test.
Yeah, spend it more on the front part that you know you can get
those
right.
Those 40 that captured your 6th grade years.
Yeah. Those are the ones you're going to get right. Those are the ones you're going to get the most of your points from. Because the ACT, instead of subtracting points for all the things you got wrong, they add up all the ones you got right.
Right.
So it's slightly different.
Okay. Did you guys hear that? Say that one more time, Kjerstin.
So instead of subtracting and saying, oh, they got 14 of these wrong, 14 of these 60 questions wrong, they're going to say, oh, look at this. They got 46 of these right. And that's how they grade. It's different.
See? That is so awesome. So why waste time on something that you're unsure on, knowing that it won't count against you if you don't answer it?
Yes.
And lose all your time.
Yes.
There you go, guys. It's working for you. Get the ones right, and your score goes up. The other ones, again, skip.
Yes.
This is specifically for the ACT.
Specifically for the ACT.
Each exam has its own
a little bit different. Yeah, I do ACT. I'm not as familiar with SAT, but I'm sure that it's similar. I know it's different. Yes. Okay, your third section that you take is reading. So this is the one that people freak out and think they're going to lose time on. Mm-hmm. So there's 4 sections of your reading. You read 4 different passages, and they go in the same order every single time.
Okay.
So there's a humanities one.
Okay.
There's like a sciencey one.
Okay.
There's one that's just someone telling you a story.
Okay.
And then there's one.
Storytelling.
Yeah, storytelling. And there's one that switches a little bit every time. A lot of times they'll compare 2 passages.
Okay.
And then, so what you want to do is when you're practicing, because we said at the beginning, you need to practice.
Yes.
Practicing is your number one thing.
Not one time. That doesn't count.
Lots of times.
Lots of time.
So when you're practicing, go through and count how many questions you get right for each passage.
Okay.
So then you know, okay, maybe you're best at the humanities passage. So then you want to do the humanities passage first. Because you want to spend your time on humanities. So you might say, okay, I want to do my passages. The third passage is always the one that I get the most points on. Okay. Then I do the first one. Then I do the fourth one. And then maybe you're like, oh, science isn't my thing. I'll do the second one very last if I have time.
Okay.
Leave it for last.
Yes.
Leave the ones, the unknowns, again, to the last.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get penalized for not answering. You're only going to get counted for the things you got right.
Yep.
Okay?
Right.
So figure out which passage is the one that works best for you and do that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even think about that within one section. Like the reading section, you can go after things that you know.
You can switch up your order.
Oh.
Yeah. Because like for me, I'm really good at the ones that are like storytelling because I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Right.
But I don't love like the more sciencey technical things. But like my sister, all she wants to read is the sciencey technical things. So for her, that was her best passage. But for me, it wasn't my best one. So you can switch your order around, and it's really, really helpful.
Cater to you and your strengths, guys.
Yes. Okay, another thing for the reading section, read the questions first, then read the passage. If you don't have time to read, if you're not a very fast reader, read the first and last sentence of every paragraph.
First and last
sentence, because that'll tell you the topic sentence, so what the paragraph's about.
Okay.
And the end, so kind of what they conclude with.
Right.
And then you'll know if they ask you a question like, in line 76, what does it say about this? You can go back and be like, oh yeah, I remember this paragraph. It's probably about this. Or you can find information. Oh, it's probably in this area.
Okay.
You can figure that out.
It's almost like when you read the question first, you can go back and just look at those, skim through those sentences that talk exactly to the question.
Yep, you can totally just
and your mind has already have this blinking light. Oh, that was one of the questions, right?
Yeah.
And so it can remember, hey, this is the information I'm looking for.
Yep.
Okay.
You already know.
You already know.
Yep. This is the last tip for reading. This goes for the whole ACT.
Okay.
Just read something for 15 minutes a day. It can be
practice
a fun book. It can be a comic. It can be, I don't care. You can read your scriptures.
Love letters.
Yeah, love letters. You can practice your writing. Practice your writing for the ACT or the SAT with some love letters.
Letters you want to read?
Yeah.
Actually, I should. We'll save that for a different week. That's a
different story. Okay, your last section is your science section. So this is kind of similar to reading in that they're going to give you different passages.
Okay.
And they're going to give you some reading to do, but they're also going to give you some charts.
Okay.
So for science, though, they're mostly going to ask you about the charts.
The charts.
So look at your graphs, figure out all your graphs, say, okay, this graph is about this, this graph is about this, this graph is about this. Then read your questions, see what questions you can answer just from the graphs without doing any of the reading. And then if you need to read, then you can read.
Okay. So graphs are key for the science section. Look at your graphs, kind of understand what the graph is about.
Yep.
And then look at the questions.
And
then read if you need to read.
Yeah, because you don't want to waste your time reading if you can answer all the questions with the graphs,
right?
Or the charts.
Right.
You don't need to spend time sitting there being like,
all you kids
I wonder
out
what
there,
this word means.
Yeah, that are science geeks. I mean, good students. This is awesome to know because they probably already look at a lot of graphs, and so they're able to analyze information.
Yes.
ACT, right? The ACT strategies. Yeah,
yes.
Really
Also, for science, they'll ask you lots of big words, or they'll put lots of big words in the reading that might kind of trip you up. Don't get scared of those. They're probably not going to ask you, what does this word mean exactly? You don't have to be like, oh, I don't know what that word means.
I don't either.
You don't have to. Yeah. Nobody knows what that word means unless they're in a science field. So if you're one of those smart science people, you might know. But unless you're one of those
science gurus out there,
this is for you. But other than that, don't worry about it. If they do ask, you can probably figure it out with context clues because they're never going to ask you a question that it isn't answered right in the text.
All right. Well, that's kind of nice. I wish all teachers would take that.
Right. They give you the text, they give you the place that has the answers, you just have to find it.
Versus something you talked about in orientation.
Yes.
Okay. So what else can we cover with our students tonight?
If you're doing writing, make sure, so a lot of colleges look at the writing. Okay. So I went to BYU, and I know that BYU likes it if you do writing, so if you want to go there, then that might be a good thing.
They do ask a lot on the application.
Yes, they ask you to do a lot of writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Make sure you have a thesis statement. So
Statement.
Your thesis statement, all that means, it's not scary, it just means one sentence that says kind of what you're talking about. And
tell them what you're going to tell them.
Yep, just say, this paper is going to be about X, Y, and Z, and then go through and list your reasons. This is about this because, tie it back. This is about this because this.
I like that.
You can just tie it all back in. It doesn't have to be scary.
Tell them what you're going to tell them, right?
Yep.
And then tell them what you told them.
Yep, exactly. Support what you already said.
There you go. There you go.
Yep.
All right. So any last tips that you'd like to share with our students?
Yes. So as far as your mindset goes for the test, since you've been practicing lots, I know you're going to practice lots. I know you'll do it.
Yes.
Make sure you have a certain kind of mindset that you do right when you get to the test. So for me, every time I took a test in college, I would walk in, I'd put all my stuff down, and then I'd take 3 deep breaths, kind of calm myself down, and then my brain would be like, oh, yep, we're taking a test now. We're ready. We can do this.
Okay.
Then you're calm. So you can do that. I know I have a friend who likes to twirl her pencil 4 times. 4 times every time.
We're not superstitious or anything.
No, not superstitious or anything. But that gets her brain in the mindset.
Yes.
It gets her ready.
It triggers your mind.
It gets her ready
to
take a test.
Game day, right? Game day.
Yeah. Maybe you have a certain desk setup. Maybe you like your water bottle in the front and you have 2 extra pencils. Just make sure that you're prepared. I'd also say prepare the night before. Get all your stuff ready. You get a break for snacks in the middle. So Get your snacks, get your water bottle, get all your pencils, your calculator, whatever you're taking with you.
Right? No
yes, be ready the night before, and then, number 1, go to bed early.
Did you
not stay up all night?
Don't do your Netflix binge the night before.
Don't
hang out with your girls the night before.
True.
Yeah, we've had a few people that
never
we won't mention.
Kids. Never.
They'll sleep in the middle of the exam. Gotta be woken up.
Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Kjerstin.
Thank you, Kjerstin.
Yeah,
and I'm so grateful to Kjerstin because, you know, when you were preparing for these academically awesome schools, right, they're looking at everything. And testing was one of those areas that there are benchmarks, right? Yes. Certain scores that would afford you to even be looked at.
Yes.
For those schools. And so many of our kids, or our seniors that we've coached with, and many of them have already received acceptance letters, worked hard with this girl. And rightly so, because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake here when you're looking at going to Ivy League, when you're looking at going to the academies, when you're looking at going to these major schools that we know you kids are capable of, and we don't want to just throw it away because there was one thing that we could have just hung in there to knock it out. And so thank you so much.
6 practice tests is worth it to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. I promise it is.
Oh yeah. And so if you need some support, if you need some help, please reach out to us and we can connect you with Kjerstin here, and she can kind of give you some one-on-one coaching that I'm sure would be beneficial. So,
any questions to take?
Any questions? We got lots of love from people out there, just saying that this is a great resource for families. Great tips. That goes to you, Kjerstin, for ACT. And then Jason out there saying we love you guys, and we're so blessed to have you folks kind of joining us tonight. So Lemma, is there anything that you want to talk about as far as test taking information that we could share with families?
So because the way they're looking at test scores now, we're seeing that, so these tests are going away, and the rest of the application is still left to be weighed and analyzed.
Right.
That means, so in a particular application, like the common application that the Ivy League uses, Stanford uses as well, and many of the state schools use the common application. They have the section personal essay, also the activity section.
Right.
They have letters of recommendation. They have supplemental essays. So that means all those sections are now being weighed heavily because there's no more. There's still the GPA, but there's no more ACT score, SAT score,
right.
Which means the story that you tell, on that application, the way you tell it, all parts need to be able to tell exactly who you are, what you're passionate about. It can't be a bunch of mismatched stuff that's not really related. At some point, you'll have to explain that you've discovered these are the things that you're passionate about, these are the things that are important in your life, and you need that degree to get it. And then also that you're going to bring all this experience and make a big impact on that campus. So while you're putting together all those things and making sure the letters of recommendation are saying the same thing that your personal essay is saying, that your list of activities that you were involved in, the service, leadership, and talent development, is saying the same story as everything else. So it just culminates into this one consistent story of the things that are important to you, and you've made those decisions based on that, and that you absolutely are applying to this school because you absolutely need it. You need that degree from that school, and watch what I do to impact that school. So, puts a lot of pressure on families to organize earlier.
Right.
So
right.
We need to, or any people that are listening, you need to be involved in activities, in your 9th grade year and your 10th grade year, because those are the years that create the history. You can't very well put a personal essay together and say, this is very important to me, and you only got involved in it senior year. Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, you're building your history. You can have years where you're going out and discovering, exploring what's out there in the community, high school community, but at some point you have to narrow down the things that are important to you, and now you're really involved in service and leadership and those things. And I just want to say to some of those LDS kids that are out there, they if they're involved in
Latter-day
young men,
Saints. Church of Jesus Christ of
Latter-day
Saints.
To clarify.
They have youth meetings every week.
Yes.
And they have class presidencies.
Yes.
And their whole purpose of getting together weekdays is to go out and minister to those those who are in need. That process, the way the leaders are teaching them how to pray and find inspiration, and then going out and giving service to other people, and then making assignments, and then even coming back and reporting back. That's not being taught everywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, and you can frame that. You can frame that in a college way and say, oh, I did all these service opportunities. I was part of this massive organization, and this is what you did. All of that is important for your college acceptance.
And that's exactly what I want to say. Don't ever underestimate or minimize young men and young women activities and the process that they're being taught as they're looking to gather Israel. They're the hope of Israel, and when they go out and minister, that stuff's not being taught. So you really can frame that in a way of, this is I've had great experience in doing this, and then I would always say, if you're starting as a freshman, sophomore, junior, I would say journal your experiences, because when you finally want to open up that application junior year, you wanna like almost like a wave of experiences to be able to share, and so that's going to be important. These years, if they're passing and you're involved in activities but you can't remember back, that's tough. So journal your experiences, whether it be young men and young women. It could be your quest to be a community leader or a tech guru, or could be someone that's involved in STEM or science, or even music, being a musician or a dancer. Journal your experiences, because you'll be so happy you did. Because when you go to open up that Common App and you have a list of activities and you want to tell this story, man, you're going to reflect back and be able to have this really strong story, because it's going to come with a lot of emotion. So
yeah, and you don't want to tell the same story
like
12 different times. So if you've already journaled, then you have 20 different stories to choose for your 6 application questions, or however many they make you do.
That's right.
Well, gosh, guys, was that a mouthful or what? I mean, we're talking about test prep, and then here we're talking about the relation of testing and how now the application process becomes a little more complicated. And so we have some questions that have come in. I want to thank Alana and Kjerstin for kind of laying out that foundation of, just because you're not a senior yet, there's tons of work to be done. In fact, this work can only be done at this stage of the game.
If you're a freshman and sophomore year, you've got to get some help. You got to get some help to. What I mean is to get yourself oriented. Don't think you have these 3 years to just wait until junior year or senior year.
Yeah, don't just be hanging out right now, guys.
You
got to get that vision
intentional
going.
and purposeful things to do.
Right.
Freshman year, sophomore year, junior year.
So we have a person weighing in asking us, y'all from Utah, and I think by the sounds of what we're talking about here, you probably gathered, yes, we're from Utah. We have another question here. Who do we request the letter of recommendations from?
Sure. So for many of the big universities, right, the ones that, top 50 schools in the country, it's going to come down to the 5, right? It's going to come down to humanities, STEM, your actual assigned school counselor,
right.
Those 3. Then it could be a community leader or a family member, that knows you really well.
A coach.
Coach, perfect. Coach would be perfect.
Yeah.
So these letters of recommendation need to tell the same story consistently about you. And if they're not going to really, so what's important is, in order to get a good letter of recommendation, you've got to have a good relationship.
Yeah.
You have to start that relationship as early as you can. If you're a ninth grader, perfect. Listen, if you're listening to you ninth graders, go right up to your school counselor.
Yeah.
And your assigned school counselor and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. Smith, I just want to tell you my name is so-and-so, and I have a goal of attending whatever great school that you're dreaming of, and I need you to help me. And so I and then you're occasionally taking over the I don't know, you're taking over a Subway sandwich, some chocolate.
Get a little bribery going. Don't worry about it.
Find out what their favorite drink is, soft drink.
You gotta get them to understand, spot you. They should be able to spot you in a crowded hallway.
Yeah.
And yell your name and call you out and that kind of stuff. They should be able to do. That's the kind of relationship you should be having with every single person that you're going to ask to write a letter of recommendation for, because it's very, very competitive.
Very competitive.
And if you don't give yourself a chance by having real relationships, it's the real relationships that tug at your heartstrings a little bit emotionally.
Yeah.
When they're writing, that wins the day of acceptance letters, right?
Yeah.
So it's not I turned it in, hopefully it works. No.
Yeah.
Every person you put in, you absolutely can say, heck yeah, watch this guy write this letter of recommendation for me because of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah.
So I've said that, and a lot of people say, okay, I understand that, but whether they go out and do the work, that's necessary, what the work is, which is, when you're trying to keep real relationships, you're managing the relationship. You're making sure, hey, checking on people. They're truly friends, looking out for you. What do you say when you were doing your letters of recommendation? How did you handle that when you were doing things for BYU?
So BYU didn't make you have letters of recommendation when I applied, which makes me sound kind of ancient. I only graduated from high school 5 years ago, guys. But I have triplets. So ancient.
Yeah, we hand wrote our personal statements. So trust me, we're the ones that are older.
We use hammer and chisel.
I don't know about this guy.
Yeah, but I have triplet siblings that are seniors this year, and they've applied to all sorts of colleges, trying to figure out where to go. And
those kids rock.
They are awesome. I will hype up my siblings forever.
Yeah.
But one sister in particular, she wanted to go to a ton of different colleges, apply all over the place, Ivy League, locally, whatever. She just wanted to have all her options open because she just wants to be an engineer, and she's trying to figure out what school fits that best for her.
Okay.
And so for her letters of recommendation, she went to all the teachers that she'd had for at least 2 years.
Nice.
So she went to the teachers that she's had for a long time, and she's like, okay, I'm going to ask probably like my Spanish teacher, because she was like, I go to Spanish every day, I participate every day,
Right.
I do all the things that I should in that class, I turn all my things in. And then she's like, okay, and what AP teachers do I have? Because then it looks good because they're like an honors or an AP,
Right.
or it looks like, yep, the people that, you're trying to impress because it's a college level course.
Right.
Those are the teachers that really like her a lot. And so she was like, okay, I have to strategically think. What are the teachers that, they have the right credentials that I want to represent me?
Right.
And they're going
It
to
kind of
recommend
holds
me.
weight, right? When
Yeah.
they're going to send that letter of recommendation.
Yeah.
It's
and you're
not
a
an
STEM
easy
student.
thing to just, pick a letter of recommendation person.
No.
Because you really have to analyze the relationship, analyze their background, and what's going to really hold
And
weight.
are they going to be a good writer?
That's right.
Are they going to write the
Right.
nice thing that you want them to write in the right way? Are they going to have good grammar and good spelling and write something that looks good to a college board? Because if you're putting in all this effort, you want them to also put in the effort.
Exactly. So I'm going to have to break up all the fun here, and we've got another question from Todd. Hey, Todd, thanks for joining us tonight. Todd asks, I've heard there is greater value with a sealed letter of recommendation to the school instead of one you include in your application. Any truth to that? Anyone
Well,
want to take a
Yeah,
stab at that?
so many, especially the common application, if you're using the common application, but in many others like the,
Which is for Ivy League, a lot of the Ivy League schools.
I think it's the same with BYU too. So what they do now is it's right in the application. They click on a link inside the Common App, and they fill out the email of the person they're going to ask to do the letter of recommendation. So you should already have this conversation already with the person that's going to write your letter of recommendation.
Don't spring it on them. Don't be like, by the way, I put your name down for a letter of recommendation.
Exactly.
Bad idea. Don't do it.
Don't tell them that. Tell them before.
Ask them nicely before when you're bringing them.
That's
Bring
right.
the plate lunch and then ask Auntie.
When they're full from your plate lunch that you gave your teacher, right?
Then hit them with the, hey, would you be willing to give me a letter of recommendation? These are my goals, and this is what I'd like, and I think you could help me with that.
And that's why we're telling you to build that relationship early.
Introduce yourself.
Exactly.
And tell your potential letter of recommendation writer what your goals are and what schools you're going to apply to. That way they know what you're really trying to do. So so it's done in the Common Application. They fill out something on one of the pages. They put in the email of the letter of recommendation. They click submit. It automatically goes to the letter of recommendation writer that's going to write it. So when they write it, fill in the website that they're get the link to, and then they press submit, and it goes automatically to every school that you apply to within the Common App.
Right.
And so you never see it or touch it, and it doesn't have any more weight than anybody else's, except whether it's written well or not.
Right. So the handwritten wouldn't come into play, or the sealed letter wouldn't even be seen then.
They don't use paper anyways, or an email or
Okay. All right. So all good conversation. But as far as your letter of recommendations, and we're actually going to go into this as one of our topics, I think not next week, but the following week. What we're saying is you don't just want to check the box, okay? With these applications, because they're getting even more competitive, because they're getting read or they're making it optional for your test scores, they're really going to weed you out with your story, meaning your letter of recommendation, your personal statements, and your list of activities. So we've got to find a way. I call us movie producers, film producers. You may think that's weird, but this is really what we're trying to do here. We're trying to package your story. So it's like when they read it, they're like, man, we got to watch this movie. This kid is amazing.
They're going places.
Yeah. And we want to have them on our campus. We want the story played out right here on our campus.
There's no way we can't have this person on campus.
Yeah.
That's the feeling.
That's what you're trying to go for.
Exactly.
And so with those applications, this year, the pandemic year, was the year everybody they were like sharks circling, they smelled blood, right, in the water. And all the applicants that have ever wanted to go to any one of these schools started to apply. Right? They were going to try because they smelled blood in the application water. So
meaning opportunity. Opportunity. That's what I love to say.
There has never been a time where so for every university, even the great universities, they've never had so many applicants ever.
Diverse applicants, I'd say too.
And so it went increased 300% or something like that. It's really crazy in most of these schools. So knowing that, a reader of an application to see whether a kid gets in or not is really going to take their time to get the best person out of that group. A lot of times, I went to I was at a Princeton admissions meeting on campus in Princeton, there in New Jersey. So the object lesson was the Princeton administrator had this pile of applications this high on a big science desk inside the auditorium, right? He would just want to show everybody. It was a big stack, right?
So many applicants.
Covered the whole, couldn't even see the science table. Yeah. Anyways, he comes by the table and he bumps one of the corners of the stacks, right? And then a bunch fall down, but there's still a whole bunch still on the table. And he goes, okay, these are all our applicants. The applications stayed on the table, and these are the ones that we accepted. Just to let you know. So you had all these stacks, and there was only a few. He says, so that's who you're competing against. So you can't check the box.
You can't check the
because
box.
they smell that a mile away, and you really got to be that person that tugs at their emotions to the point where they know that you're going to come on campus and you're going to make an impact on that campus.
Contribute.
If they have any doubt that your purpose is it's not going to be less than that, then you probably won't be selected.
I also will say that when you're tugging on their emotional heartstrings, you can't do that unless you write really well.
Right.
So when you're writing your essays, when you're writing your personal statement, make sure that you are not the only person.
That's right.
You're not the only person reading them.
Reading it.
Have other people read them.
Yes,
edit
that's
it.
right.
Print it out.
Yes.
Print it. Physically write. Mark it with a red
Get some
pen.
feedback.
If you're the only one that reads, which
Don't laugh
happens.
too hard.
No,
Our kids never did that.
I've been guilty of thinking that my writing's amazing, you know.
Yeah, my dad always tells me the only good writing is a good rewriting.
Remember that.
No such thing as good writing.
That's
Only
a
good
tip from a
rewriting.
lawyer, right?
Yes.
That's a tip from a lawyer, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Her dad's awesome.
But I think what we're talking about is there's opportunity for you kids, point blank, and we are here to help. And there has been a lot of great results from last year with our seniors, and it's because we took time with them. We took time to, Kjerstin specifically.
They put in the work.
Yeah.
That's right.
Coaching the ACT, right? We took time reading their personal statements and asking.
A lot of it was interviewing them, asking them the right questions, right? Getting all that purpose out of them, you know,
Exactly.
where they were feeling confident. This is who they are. This is what's important to them. And then giving them to Kjerstin so they can write it.
So that's what we're encouraging you families out there. If you need a little bit more support, Zoom with us. We have a Calendarly. Is that right? The application.
Well, you just go to our website.
The website.
www.manuialife.com. And if you go to that link there, you can book a free consultation, and that will begin the interview process of finding out more about your student, finding out more about your family.
I will say that they're awesome. My sister applied to Harvard, and she definitely called them and said, "Please help me. They're amazing. Call them for real."
She's amazing, really.
You know, we begin it with an interview, so we know exactly who you are as a kid, what your strengths are, weaknesses are, what you've done in the past, and what you're feeling good about or feeling inspired to do, and what schools you're trying to apply to. After that interview process, even we interview mom and dad too, figure out what it is that they're willing to do as far as tasks, because sometimes we can give you all the tasks and you'll know all the answers, right? Whether you're willing to do it, that's a different story.
Right, we got to get it done.
It's about, you know, hearing the tasks, and sometimes it's a bit foreign to some people, but really they're easy tasks. But it's just a matter of organizing yourself so that you can complete it in a nice, relaxed manner. And you're always putting your best foot forward when you're working with us. So that's the goal. Every kid is unique, and whether they're a Utah kid, LDS,
you don't have to be a Utah
LDS kid.
We will Zoom. We've Zoomed with families in Hawaii and California, in Arizona, even Tonga. That's right.
I Zoomed to her in Arizona right now.
So we help kids. Whether they're Polynesian or not, it doesn't matter.
There's not a kid
that we've turned down. We've tried to remove as many barriers as we can. Yeah. Because we know these services aren't available to everyone. These are services where big education consultant firms they're dotted all over Palo Alto and all over Massachusetts and New York City, right? Right. And those homes that can afford those services, they're able to get their kids in those schools. But in our underprivileged, underrepresented groups in our community, we know that these services are needed because we've got great kids ready. They've already done their work. They've got 4 years of great GPA. They got a great ACT score, but they just don't know that, number one, that they can get into these schools academically. Number two is that funding, man, is incredible. 100%
gotta love that funding.
And that's, that offers, with those needs-based and merit-based financial aid that's available to them. Sports. It's more than any athletic scholarship. Right. More than any athletic scholarship. Because you're talking about tuition and books, room and board, travel to and from school every time you need to go to school. I mean, this is every semester. It could be a computer.
Wait, our
or
kids
a
come
laptop.
home?
Yeah.
Stay in school, guys. Stay in school.
You have to let them come home once in a
Oh,
while.
wow.
So what I'm saying is, so internships and study abroad,
Yeah.
those things are paid for under these needs-based and merit-based financial aid that's available at some of these great schools. So that's the big secret that's out there. So you parents that have helped your kids achieve academic readiness for these schools,
Right.
we've got a great message for you. School can be paid for almost or completely.
So before we go, folks, I just wanted to kind of touch base on what Alema is talking about. Many of these services our community typically can't afford, and so we're trying to remove barriers by accepting donations for our foundation. So we are a 501c3, right? Did I get that?
Yep.
Yes.
501c3. We're accepting all donations. It's all tax deductible, and we also, we also do services for those customers that can afford, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because there are many that want to pay and can pay. However, for those that have a barrier that way, we don't turn anybody down really, but we are looking for donors who can do that and help sponsor some of these kids.
Right.
Because man, it just kills us that if we don't step in and help some of these kids, then they're going somewhere that's a little bit, not that it's a bad situation, but they could get so much more as far as quality of education and then funding and that kind of stuff. So anyways, we'll help them any way we can.
Because our community is underrepresented on these campuses, it's a blessing for them to receive our students, because then the culture and the vibe and the reality of our world is better addressed. And so it's good for us to kind of raise our bar to a level of we could do anything, right? And this is kind of what Manuia is all about, is may a blessing fall your way. May something happen in your life that not only blesses your family, but blesses your community, blesses your younger cousins that are looking at you, that are like, man, I want to be like that. I want to do things. And so that's what our work is about, is really having our community raise the bar in a way that we can represent, we can be accounted, we can make space for others to join us. And so I just want to congratulate all of our seniors this year. We've had some wonderful, wonderful results, and I know there's more coming. So if there's anything that we can do, please reach out to us. Remember our website, www.manuialife.com, and we'll see you next week. Manuia. It was so funny last